I don't like Kirito's character.
Yeah, I can see that. He might be a little overrated, and I think the show focuses a little too much on him.
I also don't like Leafa's character.
Yeah, I can understand that too. Her arc was a little questionable. I totally get that.
I also don't like Yuki's character.
Oh, come on!
Hello everyone and welcome to part 2 of my Sword Art Online review in honor of SAO November. And guys, I am really excited for this part. Really excited. Today I'll be looking at Season 2, which contains my absolute favorite arcs in all of SAO, which from what I've gathered is a very unpopular opinion because not a lot of people like Season 2, and I can't fathom why because this season probably has some of the show's best moments in my opinion. Let's not waste any more time and get into what those moments are. Talk about an absolute killer beginning to Season 2. This arc has everything. Cool new characters, an awesome new game world, tense action scenes, a terrifying main villain, and a really engaging murder mystery-esque storyline. In fact, this arc is so good that even the creators find themselves coming back to it many times, whether it's video games, a brief spot in Season 3, and even its own spin-off show. So what makes this arc so special? Well, let's get into the story. It's been a whole year since the events of SAO and ALO, and Kirito is once again called into action thanks to his good old rapscallion government buddy Kikuoka. Apparently, there have been a series of deaths occurring to several gamers playing a new VR game called Gun Gale Online, a futuristic sci-fi shooting game. According to Kikuoka's investigations, all of these players' deaths have one thing in common. They were all KO'd by a player who goes by the name of Death Gun. Seeing how the current VR technology took drastic safety measures following the SAO incident, Kikuoka and his team are at a loss as to how this mystery murder could possibly be causing all these IRL deaths. Thinking Kirito's status would get the killer's attention, Kikuoka tasks him with hopping into GGO and drawing out the rumored Death Gun in order to put a stop to these killings. While getting accustomed to the new game, Kirito meets a pro sniper named Sinon, who ends up showing him the mechanics and strategies of GGO. As they eventually form an unlikely partnership, they set out to solve the murder mystery and stop Death Gun from claiming more victims. Okay, I'm gonna be totally honest with you guys. I have no clue why people don't like this arc. Yeah, pretty much the only legit criticism I can find is people saying it's quote-unquote a little slow. Which maybe I can see. I mean, there is a whole episode where the two main characters sit in a cave talking, but honestly, Kirito and Sinon have such a fun dynamic that something like that never really bothered me. Although maybe that's where the other problem lies, pairing Kirito up with another girl instead of sticking it with Asuna. In fact, a lot of the original characters really get sidelined in this arc, which is a little unfortunate. Not even Yui follows her papa into the game like last time. Imagine Yui as Edie from Mass Effect. That would have been fun. Oh yeah, and I guess we do get one scummy character that has a bit of an Oberon moment, but it ends quicker and isn't nearly as drawn out. Though I admit, it's a little concerning we keep getting characters like this. Also, one criticism I've heard is Kirito having a big traumatic flashback from SAO, which was never seen in Aincrad and kind of feels like it came out of nowhere. Which, yeah, I kinda get too, but it was brought up because it's relevant to this arc, and I'll get into more of that later. But yeah, I really don't see many other problems. Okay, now for the good stuff. This arc is packed with so many awesome things I loved that honestly it's hard to know where to start. I guess I could start with a new gaming environment because I gotta say, this was the coolest one so far, and that's a lot coming from me because normally I can't stand shooting games. But something about the way this one works just really clicks for some reason. The whole game kind of feels like a mix of Halo and Call of Duty, and once again I understand the irony of the best arc in Sword Art Online being the one with guns, but Kirito still has a sword, so that's something. Oh, and I mentioned the villain before. Death Gun is without a doubt the best villain in all of Sword Art Online, which given the past and future lineup, might not be saying much. But seriously, this guy is absolutely terrifying. Cunning, deadly, smart, calculated, persistent as all heck, and scariest of all, a really good shot. Honestly, it's really difficult to go into more detail as to why Death Gun is such a good villain without spoiling the mystery, but you'll just have to trust me when I say that his method of killing his victims, both in the game and IRL simultaneously, is the most brilliant and twisted thing ever. I think his appearance alone is enough to get the point across. Also, going back to Kirito leaving his friends out of this adventure, yeah, I also think it's a bummer, but I think it makes perfect sense that Kirito would refuse to drag his friends into what could be seen as another death game, especially if it's being brought upon by his past demons that he needs to confront alone. Also, in a weird way, I like to think it's some sort of expectation subversion as well. Usually in almost every anime, the message is always some form of nothing beats the power of friendship, the only way I can do this is with my friends, all that jazz. Not that that's bad or anything, but I just think it's funny that in this arc we get a change of pace that essentially goes,
"Stop running away from your problems like a big babbling baby and solve this mess by yourself like a real man."
and that he basically does, with just a little support from Sinon. Speaking of which, lastly and most importantly, Sinon. As far as I'm concerned, Sinon was basically the star this time around. This character is one of the most intriguing additions to the show, with a character arc that was amazingly done. We learn this later, but the reason she plays Gun Gale Online in the first place was meant to be some sort of exposure therapy to deal with a traumatic moment in her past, and one that actually kinda relates to the one I mentioned Kirito having. And without giving away too much of their stories, basically they both have found themselves dealing with the guilt of taking a life in the past. Kirito with SAO, and Sinon with a slightly different past experience, and I love the way this arc tackles both of their trauma. Where Sinon has been trying to deal with it by playing GGO and becoming stronger, Kirito has been trying to completely put it behind him as much as possible, but both of them are running away from their past in some shape or form, and that past comes back to haunt them in the form of Death Gun. The way fate just seems to tie these three together is wonderfully genius and kinda eerie, and even if Kirito and Sinon are not involved romantically, their bond is a different kind of special because of how similar their experiences are. In fact, one of my all-time favorite episodes in this show perfectly showcases this. It's a scene that still gets me teary-eyed to this day, where back in the real world, Sinon is reflecting on herself.
I remember I used to be normal once. I laughed and cried just like anyone else. I didn't become who I am now because I wanted to.
It then cuts to a scene with Kirito opening up to his nurse.
The more a person wishes they could forget something, the stronger the memory becomes.
Then if I forgot, I must be a monster. They were all red players, and I could have overpowered them instead of killing them, but I went ahead and killed them anyway. If I can forget people I killed, what's that say about me as a person?
In a life or death situation, everyone's got the right to consider the people they can save over those they can't. Just think about the lives of all the people you save, and you'll make peace with your decision.
I don't know. I want to believe you, but I can't. I killed them and I can't even remember who they were. It's like I don't even care that they're dead. I don't deserve to find any peace.
If you didn't care about what you did, you wouldn't be suffering like this.
Here it goes again. I have never been so emotionally moved by a balloon since Up. But seriously, I love the way this arc tackles the subject matter. It isn't often that the main struggle of a character is someone trying to get over the guilt of taking a life, and ultimately learning that, since you did it to save your loved ones, it was basically for the greater good. It's very human, and something that a lot of vets and anyone involved in the army has been through. Not that I can speak for them, but I know it has to be scary and traumatic stuff to deal with, much less for teens to deal with. Maybe all this is the slow moment some viewers complain about, but I actually think it's for the best. It's good that this arc takes a step back from all the craziness for this kind of thing, because it needs to be taken seriously. And the ending to this arc just tops off the whole thing perfectly. Not just because they stop the villain and all that jazz, but because they close off Sinon's character arc in the best way possible. I won't give it away here, and I also wouldn't do it any justice just explaining. It's something you truly have to watch and experience. So yeah, screw the Season 2 naysayers, because this arc rocked in every possible way. It was action-packed, emotional, and all-around awesome. As far as I'm concerned, Reki really aimed high and hit the bullseye with this one.
Excalibur!
piss rock off of it, but still pretty cool, right?
Okay, so calling this one an arc is actually pretty generous, especially considering it's only 3 episodes long. Yep, you heard me, only 3. Kinda makes me wonder why it isn't just another OVA, because just like the Extra Edition, there really isn't a lot that happens here. But I'm getting ahead of myself, let's get over the story first. A month after the GGO incident, Kirito and his sister have been scouring Alfheim in search of a special quest, which contains none other than the sacred sword Excalibur as an obtainable weapon.
Excalibur!
No, not that Excalibur, but it definitely would have made this arc a lot more entertaining. After getting his team together, Kirito soon learns that ALO has developed a very interesting quest generator, and at this point has launched a specific quest that basically brings upon Ragnarok. After realizing that Ragnarok means the entirety of ALO will be destroyed, our heroes decide to set out to stop Ragnarok by finding the sword Excalibur and completing the quest.
Excalibur!
Something I've noticed with SAO is every pivotal arc has the running theme of someone's life being in danger in some way. In Aincrad, it was everyone. In Fairy Dance, it was Asuna plus 300 players. In Phantom Bullet, it was Sinon and several other GGO players. For this arc, nope. Nobody's in danger. Instead, the tension comes from the so-called Ragnarok quest basically destroying all of Alfheim. Call me crazy, but I feel like this could easily be fixed by the developers. Letting some barely known quest destroy the entire gaming world permanently would realistically be really bad for business. Unless, of course, this is some sort of meta commentary on how gaming companies just suddenly stop caring about their games. But seriously, this was probably the first time ever in SAO where I really wasn't feeling the tension. If this was treated much more like a casual, fun quest, much like the Extra Edition, I think it would have gone over better for me. As is, I just really don't buy the supposed stakes that are set up. The previous arcs always worked with someone in the video game being put in danger, but here, the video game is just putting the video game in danger. At the end of the day, it's just something that could easily be fixed with a patch or two, or playing a different game. How about getting everyone to GGO? That would be fun. Really, the only relevant takeaway we get from this arc is Kirito gets a new sword, but even then, it's one we don't even get to see him use, so it kind of feels like it was all just for nothing. Oh, wait, I know why he never used it. So yeah, this is the one time I buy any criticisms towards an SAO arc, because I really wasn't digging this one in all honesty. However, that's not to say it doesn't have some positives. For starters, I really like the idea of an algorithm that adapts legends from all around the world and creates them as quests, hence why we got Ragnarok and Excalibur, some of the most famous legends. Also, speaking of said algorithm, this is kind of a side note, but we seem to have implications of the existence of Jason and the Ring in ALO. Where are those episodes of the show? Kirito versus Jason? Yes, please! And honestly, even if this arc takes itself a little too seriously, it is always fun to see Kirito just doing normal quests with his buddies. We even got to see Sinon join the group, which was really cool. And not gonna lie, seeing them all literally team up with Thor, the God of Thunder, was pretty sick. But other than that, yeah, really wasn't feeling this arc. It wasn't horrible, but it wasn't anything fantastic either. However, let's just say I'm really glad I kept watching the show after this, because to say the next arc makes up for all this is a colossal understatement. What a way to close out Season 2. Remember when I said Phantom Bullet was the best arc in all of SAO? Well, I was partially lying. When it comes to choosing the best arc in all of SAO, it's really hard for me to choose personally, because as far as a more complex, large-scale, action-packed arc goes, yeah, Phantom Bullet would be that one. But when it comes to a nice, simple, more down-to-earth and emotional storyline, I'd say Mother's Rosario holds that. What makes this arc so good? Well, let's get into it. In a refreshing change of pace, our story this time around puts Asuna as the main character. As she becomes busy with family stuff, Asuna is offline a little more often, prompting Liz to catch her up to speed on something big going on in ALO. Apparently, a warrior known only as Zekken is challenging players all over ALO to one-on-one fights, and whoever beats Zekken will acquire a one-of-a-kind sword skill. So far, every single player that has challenged Zekken has lost, including the likes of Leafa and even Kirito. Yep, you heard me. Even Kirito lost. Intrigued, Asuna meets Zekken and finds out it's actually a young sword fighter named Yuki. After a quick sparring match, Yuki is impressed by Asuna's grit and offers her a spot in her guild, the Sleeping Knights. As it turns out, this ambitious little guild needs Asuna's help with a very important goal: to take on an entire boss all by themselves without any other guilds. Accomplishing this will get all their names on the Monument of Swordsmen located in the Black Iron Palace. Asuna agrees to help the guild as they set out to conquer the boss and get their names on the monument, not realizing the tragic reason why this goal is so important to Yuki and her guild.
Connection terminated. I'm sorry, anime critic, if you still even remember that title. But I'm afraid you've been misinformed. You are not going to pick apart the Mother's Rosario arc, nor have you been called by your obsessive compulsion to nitpick every existing good source of media. Although you have indeed been called. You have all been called here with the intention of setting straight that this particular storyline is too precious and heartfelt for the likes of such cynical self-absorbed pessimists who think Attack on Titan and Has Been Hotel are the peaks of human culture. You don't even realize that you are trapped. Your nihilistic mindset has driven you in endless circles, chasing your own relevance in some unseen chamber, always seeming so near, yet somehow out of reach. But at this rate you will never find it. None of you will. For all of you who somehow still find joy in making fun of this absolute cinnamon roll of a character, the darkest pit of hell.
Whoa, Mark, reel it in, buddy. Reel it in. Okay, I can see people not liking Aincrad. I can relate to people that hate Fairy Dance. I can even to some extent come to an understanding as to why a person might not like Phantom Bullet. But trashing on this one? Nope, nuh-uh, not happening. That's where I draw the line at. Anyone who trashes on this arc is biologically classified as an ice cube. Okay, but seriously, I don't even see a lot of people trashing on this one that often. It's actually pretty positively looked upon from my experience. Most seem to welcome Asuna as the main character, especially those who find Kirito overrated. And Yuki got a lot of praise as a newcomer, and definitely became one of the most popular characters. She's also one of the very few female characters who people don't accuse of trying to hook up with Kirito, which is nice. All in all, especially when you consider the direction this arc went in, I think most people just don't have the heart to trash on it. The character of Yuki perfectly sums up everything good about this arc. As some of you may have picked up on, she is without a doubt my favorite character in all of Sword Art Online. It is really difficult to explain why without spoilers, especially since I really want people to experience this arc for themselves. Yuki is special in this storyline because she comes into Asuna's life at a very low point, one that heavily involves stress that comes from her mother. Basically, Asuna's mother is not only trying to get her into a different school away from her friends, but she also rejects her relationship with Kirito and is attempting to find a different suitor. This puts Asuna into a bit of a depression as she can't even find herself to discuss it with Kirito. But then she meets the endless optimist Yuki who helps boost her spirit. The two become very close, almost like sisters who help one another throughout the arc, in both big ways and small ways. And with Yuki's help, Asuna eventually works up the courage to properly communicate to her mother on why her friends mean so much to her. And once again, I really can't talk about the rest of the storyline out of fear of spoilers. Even the name of the arc is kinda spoilery now that I think about it. I most certainly would love to talk about in an SAO video next year, but for now, I recommend at least starting with Season 2, Episode 18. But keep some tissues handy, because this thing gets bittersweet as all heck. One way or another, something that every storyline in this show has in common is one simple message. Life is precious, so keep fighting. Even if the show isn't as popular as Demon Slayer this and JoJo that, it still resonated with so many people because of its profound message. The show is by no means perfect, and it also has its fair share of dark moments and terrible characters, but there's always that little spark of hope in the distance no matter how bad things get. And that's something I always appreciated about this show. Maybe after watching these videos you feel like watching the show now, or maybe you still would rather not. But either way, I'm just glad I had the opportunity to share with you guys as to why this is my favorite anime of all time.